Kia ora tātou, and thank you to all of our presenters today who have joined this live Q&A session. As you know, the theme of today's agenda is digital transformation in K-12 education. I will quickly introduce our speakers who you've just heard from, starting with Howard Youngs from the Auckland University of Technology, who discussed how the COVID-19 pandemic has forced the digital transformation of education. Kia ora, Howard. We then have Chris Lawrence from Te Kura and Steve Elliott from D2L, who I think is just on his way to he's just finished presenting. Both Chris and Steve presented on big picture learning today, a really valuable and informative session. Kia ora to you both.
Kia ora.
And we are also joined by Joy Hotter, a Business Development Manager from Education New Zealand, Manapo ki te ao, who showcased the New Zealand Global Competency Certificate, which has been a hugely successful initiative that is maintaining the connection between international learners during the pandemic and encouraging global citizenship. So we do have some questions that are coming through. We'll try and cover off and attempt to answer as many as we can in the next 15 minutes. For those of you who have joined as attendees, please do type any through via the Q&A box, but I will start on this one perhaps for Howard. There is a fair bit in this question, but I'll hand it to you.
Okay,
how can teachers find a balance to care for students, prepare their online teaching lessons, learn new digital skills, and work on all the admin work that is required by schools all at the same time?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the keys is that's where educational leadership comes in and the work of our leaders in schools, because their primary focus has to be enhancing the conditions in which teachers can teach and students can learn. And quite often school leaders are the gatekeepers in terms of how much change teachers are needing to cope with. So that becomes a real key part. The second part is that teachers need to feel safe to be able to communicate back to their leaders about their own well-being and about their workloads. And there has to be some real change in that. So there's got to be an aspect of trust there that when leaders hear these stories, they can act. So rather than pile more and more onto teachers, we need to put the focus back onto leadership and say, are you really looking after your teachers to enable them to be able to do all of this, the online, the caring, and the preparation of teaching content?
Thanks, Howard. So you mentioned earlier in your session the care that the teachers need to show for their students, but it does sound like there's also the same thing for the school leaders showing the right level of care for their teachers as well to help with this process.
Yeah, we could say that having a culture of care is really important.
Okay, thank you. One more question here for you. Do you think digital transformation is a one-time event at the moment, or is it an ongoing process? So do you think the digital transformation seen at schools will change when the pandemic is over?
No, I think it will continue. However, I think what the pandemic has done has accelerated some of our engagement with digital technology. But at the same time, because it's been accelerated, it's actually raised some other concerns around student well-being. And I think that is something that governments, government policy, people in education, teachers and school leaders need to really grapple with. Because if we go too much online, we run the risk, as I said in my presentation, of losing the local curriculum and the local culture. And also we run the risk of losing that face-to-face dynamic, which is so important and something that our students actually ask for.
Okay, thanks, Howard. I'll move over. There's some questions here for Chris and Steve. Starting with this one, how do you believe the adoption of technology has changed the way that students engage in the programs now?
I'll kickstart. I suppose that the biggest sort of area where we've found sort of improvement in that area is response time. we're a school which is by distance, so response time in terms of our communication with a student has always been sort of slightly slower, but going online, technology has given us the ability to respond to the needs of our students very, very quickly, let it be using different communication tools or an online platform. The other area is we are able to see our students more. It might sound weird, they're still at distance, but we can actually see their working environments through video conferencing and chat. So we actually get a bit more of an understanding, a bit more of a profile of our students to be able to personalize courses to that particular student depending on what their needs are.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Another question here saying distance education sometimes has a high dropout rate. Has going online made any positive changes in the dropout rates of students?
Within our school, we've seen it hasn't got worse. We were actually anticipating, just in terms of the transitional period, that we would get a drop within the roll numbers. However, this was not the case. The uptake of it was incredibly positive, but we were all learning at the time, and I think making people aware that we're on a learning journey together. It's not just the students, it's also us and also the education sector itself, made sort of life a lot easier in managing those expectations.
Thanks, Chris. One other question here related probably to government relationships. It's saying what has been the Ministry of Education's feedback on your products? That's the question, or programs.
Well, I can probably answer that one. It's been an excellent response. I mean, essentially that's due to the fact that the curriculum that was provided by Takura, I think I said in that previous presentation, curriculum is king. And they have a systematic array of curriculum from year 13 right down to the lower levels. It's not just a curriculum, it's a rich, engaging curriculum that's been developed so that almost you can be self-paced when you're moving along. And the beauty of that is, ties into the other question, is that you have a great standardization across the different courses that are being taught. I think what it's done is it's created within Takura, and anyone that's using it, creates a collegiate atmosphere, because this is not about individually as a teacher trying to create the best content. It's working together as a group. So you have leaders working together to build the best content experience. So that's probably the key points that I would make.
Thanks, Steve. This might be one more question for you, Steve. Which are your most sought after programs in New Zealand and internationally?
Could you just define a little bit what you mean by programs, as in?
Or sorry, I'm just reading the question verbatim here, but it might be a product or or D2L.
Well, I think fundamentally when people are thinking about going online, we have a suite of products. I mean, we really that central hub of an integrated learning platform. And we're not like the walled garden of yesteryear. The Elements has transformed and changed. Essentially, that integrated learning platform. So when we work with clients, they're utilizing some really best-of-breed applications. We integrate with Microsoft Teams, plagiarism solutions. But fundamentally, people are wanting to have a system that's going to help them to standardize and very easily engage with their learners in terms of the curriculum, have an engagement between teachers and students, and also be able to report upon that in a very comprehensive way. So it depends on where you're starting. If you're just starting out, most people just want to get their content up there, and you can do that. We sort of cater, in a sense, for first-time users and also the advanced users.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I'll hand it over to Joy now. There's some questions related to the NZGCC. How do you measure success for the NZGCC program?
Sure. It is in the platform where learners can study the GCC. There is actually a survey that is built into the program. So throughout the learning progress, the students are actually surveyed through the whole program. So they're able to provide their view of global competence or global citizenship at that point of their course, and then they do that again close to the end of the course, so that they can measure how much of that learner's view have changed throughout the course. And also facilitators are able to work with the students on live sessions, and so they can also capture the learner's feedback as well.
Thanks, Joy. There's another question. How does the New Zealand GCC differ from other global citizenship education initiatives that you might be aware of in Asia? Is there anything that makes this particular one stand out from others?
Yeah, I think the program itself, the content itself may not be unique. What is very different is how NZ has partnered up with different institutions to provide this program. So the learners are from New Zealand domestic schools and the domestic New Zealand students. They will be doing the course alongside students from other parts of the world. So give you an example is we've had students from Palmerston North here in New Zealand who did the NZGC program alongside a group of Ho Chi Minh City students from Vietnam. And so the learners are actually able to do the course alongside each other, and they're in live sessions discussing their different views of their culture, of their background, about their life experience as well. So that is the unique part of it, and how the facilitator trying to draw the perspective from each student as well in this intimate small live sessions.
Thanks, Joy. There's another comment or question that's come up in the discussion forum from a lecturer in Vietnam, and who is saying, thanks to technology, we have more opportunities to bridge across cultural diversities. I really want to get more information about the cases of educational exchange programs for both teachers and students in Vietnam, the requirements, conditions, implications. Are you able to advise, Joy, on anyone watching now who is interested in the program? What can they do to get into contact and try and be part of the NZGCC?
Yeah, definitely. You can, I'm not sure how we can type this in, but you can send email to us. And my personal email address here at ENZ is joy.hotter, that's my name, at enz.govt.nz. And leave your contact detail here in the chat, and then we'll get in touch with you.
Okay, thanks, Joy. I'll come back to Chris and Steve briefly. There's a question around the transition to going online, which we've touched on, but were there any other main challenges that you've seen, both from a teacher's and student's perspective?
I think probably the biggest thing that we encountered was, and I think I said this within the presentation, was it wasn't technology that was the main concern. It was probably the professional development of both our teachers and building that confidence on utilising a new platform, a new way of doing things. Many of our teaching staff have been doing this for 20, 30 years, and that amount of change within such a small amount of time was quite significant. So building a support structure and some sort of the strategies and models that need to be around that was incredibly important for the success of actually completing that transition.
Thanks, Chris. We've got just about a minute left. I'm just going to, Howard, just to get you to touch on one final comment you made in your presentation, the research showing that just one technology platform was viewed as the most sort of, I guess, optimal solution rather than a broad range. Would you like to expand on that point at all? I know certainly as a parent, I've found that with kids doing home-based learning. Is that a key point that's come out?
Yes, that came out from a research report published out of Melbourne, where they surveyed New Zealand and Australian school teachers. So it came, the data was collected around during the first lockdown, and teachers said they preferred working around a smaller number of platforms rather than a broad range. Where some teachers actually said it felt like they were beginning teachers again. So it is something that we do need to bear in mind in future situations like this.
Great. Thank you, Howard. I'm going to have to end it there. But again, thanks to all our presenters who have joined this session. And we'll see some of you back for the second session later today. Kia ora.
Kia ora, ka kite anō.
Let's head back to Timeline now. Again, just using the tab on the top left-hand corner, back to Timeline.